All right, a good Wednesday afternoon, everyone. Happy hump day. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure. Yesterday, Imelda was over in Texas making landfall. It's a huge rainmaker for them. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so right over in there, there's all the moisture associated with Imelda. What we're obviously watching for down the road is not Umberto. There's Umberto, and it's going to head northeast, so it's acting exactly how we thought it would. What we're watching is this right in here. This is Jerry, okay? Tropical Storm Jerry. Now, it's going to be moving west-northwestward over the next couple of days, but there's some interesting things taking place in front of it that I think are going to play a huge role in what it does down the road. For example, notice just out in front of it, see kind of this little bit of a tannish shading right in there, and then also notice an upper level low right in here. This upper low is actually giving it a little bit of wind shear. There's also a little bit of dry air to the north of it. So it's not what I would call in a perfect area, but it's definitely in an area where it can strengthen. I don't want to give the impression that it can't. It will. It's just not in a perfect area. So if you're wondering, okay, why is this just not cut and dry? Why is this not a simple forecast? Well, it's because there's going to be a lot of things happening over the next 4 days that could really kind of throw this thing off course. For example, Jerry's not even guaranteed to really strengthen that strong. What happens if it stays really weak? Well, historically speaking, we've talked about how weaker storms do tend to stay farther south. So if it stays weaker, it might go farther south. If it goes stronger, it might go farther north. However, it's not that simple with this particular storm, and that is because of where Umberto is located. If Jerry were to get stronger, believe it or not, Umberto's kind of giving like a channel through a trough right up in here, which is going to give way to a stronger high pressure in here. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry does more like this, okay, in that scenario. Doesn't mean it will. I'm just saying these are why there's so many moving parts down the road with where Jerry can go. And by the way, if that's not enough, you actually do have a little tropical low that's sitting right here in the Eastern Caribbean. I know, it's really kind of complicated out there. So you currently have tons of dry air funneling its way down on the backside from Umberto down into Florida. You have some strong wind shear coming through here. You have a tropical low right in here that's going to try and work its way northward. Could that play a role in what Jerry does when it moves that way? Could they actually kind of run into each other, that type of thing, which then one affects the other? Believe it or not, all that is possibility and is on the table. Let's look at the latest Euro ensemble, okay? This is kind of interesting. You might be looking at this going, oh, wow, this is a given. You know, it's just going to move west-northwestward and then turn to the north. Well, 10 out of the 50 ensemble runs do show a more westward path. And interestingly enough, of those 10 tend to be stronger. So that kind of goes back to our theory that we were just talking about a couple minutes ago about how if it's stronger, it might actually try to go a little bit farther south and west. Now, I'm seeing positives right now, though. I don't want to give anybody the impression that I'm thinking there's a great chance of this going westward towards Florida. I don't think that's a great chance. Again, 10 and 50, that's a 20% chance when you look at the Euro ensembles, just that alone. But I don't want to give up on this idea of, oh, well, it's not going to go west, so forget about it, it's going to turn north. Yes, I do think the likelihood is it will turn to the north, but I've seen tropical systems over the years just not behave correctly. And again, going back to this original satellite, Jerry is just trying to develop right now. And one of the things we've learned in meteorology over the past 10 to 20 years is the hardest time that model guidance has is in the beginning stages of when these tropical systems are developing. When they are like Umberto is right now, where it's fully developed, very strong, that's actually very easy to predict because it's almost like it's making its own atmosphere. So we know exactly where it's going, we know exactly how it's going to respond to everything, but Jerry is just kind of getting going, okay? And when it's just getting going, it could respond differently to this upper low than we thought. It could respond to this drier air than we thought. It could respond even to this little tropical low differently than what we thought. And therefore, a tiny little difference of maybe just, instead of doing like that, maybe going like that, believe it or not, that can make a huge difference down the road. So for example, let's go back to this Euro ensemble. Again, this might not seem like a big deal, but take the farthest east and then take the farthest southwest. Okay, that's a massive difference. Look at that difference. That's a 1,000-mile difference, okay? And so that's one of the reasons why we kind of slowly walk our way through this process. So in general, yes, it does look like Jerry will want to take a northerly turn down the road, and here's why. Look at computer model guidance showing a generally high pressure ridge to the north of it right now, to the north of Jerry. And then here's Umberto with what we call a trough and basically a dip in the jet stream off the eastern seaboard. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? Let's move this forward in time. What I want you to notice is that by right about Friday afternoon, models are actually having a hard time even picking out where Jerry is. It's right in there. But again, looks like it's struggling. Looks like maybe some wind shear is affecting it. And maybe this high pressure is kind of pushing down on it a little bit harder than originally thought, which is why I said I wouldn't be surprised if it goes a little bit farther west than originally thought. Now, the trough is still in place here, left over from Umberto, so that's good news. Let's go a little bit further out in time, okay? Again, really hard to pick out where Jerry's going to be, but you kind of get a good idea by Saturday that it's probably right about in here. Here's your high pressure ridge. It's kind of sprawled out. And look at the trough. It's kind of departing. It's moving away. It's exiting off to the northeast. Okay, so that's a recipe for sometimes storms getting left behind. They just kind of sit here. Remember, Dorian sat there for a long time off the coast of Florida. All right, let's progress this further. And what I want you to notice is how there appears to be a long period of time where Jerry just kind of sits there, and you can kind of see it right in here. There's your trough. There's another high pressure ridge trying to build in here, but this one has finally departed. So does Jerry finally, at that time, we're talking like way out at Sunday or Monday, finally go, okay, I think I'm just going to creep out this way? Or does it just sit here and just wait for the next trough to pass by, which in that regard, not necessarily a bad thing, but what I'm saying is it's not set in stone when it's going to make that northeasterly turn. Well, again, along with the Euro ensembles, everything's kind of saying right now that it looks like it moves very, very slowly, and then at some point next Monday into Tuesday, a second trough, or basically like a big cold front, comes off the east coast of the U.S., and at that point, that's when it finally strengthens and moves northeastward, okay? Which we've seen numerous times, not just this season, but in seasons of the past. Let me show you a different map that I really like to look at as a meteorologist. A lot of meteorologists will not show you stuff like this. They'll tend to go, it's too sciencey. What this is this is a map showing run-to-run changes. So, for example, if I go back in time to a previous run and we see blues and yellows start to show up, okay, so for example, what this would mean is the model says, oh, all of a sudden I see this being a stronger low pressure, this being a little bit stronger low pressure, a little bit lower pressures than previously thought, and the yellow colors indicate a little bit higher pressures than what I previously thought. In other words, model to model consistency, or is something changing? Let me take this all the way out to Monday going into next Tuesday. Notice what I'm seeing right here on the East Coast is that all of a sudden the European model says, gosh, this seems a lot stronger than we originally thought. This next, remember that secondary trough I was talking about? That's the one right there. It seems a lot stronger than what we saw yesterday at this time. Well, if that's the case, then that means if it's stronger, that means this will be pushed to the northeast much stronger and more forcefully than what we were thinking yesterday. Hence the idea of that northerly turn. Okay, now let me come to the latest run and look what's happened. Well, now all of a sudden it's kind of gone back the other way and it said, maybe it wasn't as strong as what we thought. So my point here is, do I think a northerly turn is likely to happen, which is what the official forecast is kind of starting to trend at to the north? Yeah, I do think that's likely. I do think that northerly turn is going to start to happen somewhere in here, but a lot of variables will have to happen. It'll have to be at a certain strength and intensity. Plus, don't be surprised if it just kind of sits out here. Remember, Dorian did that. And then, of course, Umberto did that. Don't be surprised if Jerry does that. And it's because they have to wait for these things to kind of move out of the way. They have to wait for everything to kind of move in train persistence, or in other words, in line. So this might not be able to move until sometime early to mid next week when that cold front is finally coming off the eastern seaboard. But yes, that's currently the trends that we're seeing and what we're looking at this time. And then not to try and get you to go, oh gosh, more behind it, but yes, it does look like then behind that, we actually could be looking at maybe even at least one, if not two more waves coming off the coast of Africa and all of them moving like this. So this season's obviously far from over, and with us being in the peak of the season, this shouldn't really surprise anybody that there's a lot of tropical systems out there that we're watching. And as of right now, no immediate threats to the United States. Obviously, Meldo, with the rainfall in eastern Texas, that's the biggest deal right now. All right, I'll have more updates for you coming up later. I'll let you know if there's any drastic changes in the models for tonight, but that's about all I have for now. Happy Wednesday. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure.